Welcome to Bible study. This is the Bible study which we are preparing for the last Sunday in February in 2025, seventh Sunday of after the Epiphany. We are in the book of Proverbs. If you have your text in front of you and you have an opportunity to open that, I encourage you to do so. We're going to start here in Proverbs chapter 13. We're going to skip a little ahead here. And what I want to do today with you is more talk about how to read and to use the Proverbs, and then do it a little bit with you. We live in what can only be described as a prosaic age. Our way of reading and our way of gaining information through text is largely through what is best described as a discursive prose. What we read on the internet, in a magazine, in a textbook at school, that's all prose, and it's all a form of conveying information. That's extraordinarily useful for us. It's got the advantage of having an accessibility for everybody to read it and to really pull the same thing out of it, which is what you're looking for when you're trying to convey something in an educational textbook, or when you're writing a news story or something like that. But when it comes to answering questions like, why am I here? And what is the meaning of my life? And what is a good life? Those questions are somewhat resistive to being expressed in discursive prose. This is something that's been acknowledged for a very long time. Our problem is that we have so immersed ourselves in discursive prose, in this regular essay-like prose, that we have at times really forgotten, many of us have forgotten, how to read other kinds of literature. There are still people writing and reading poetry very seriously. There are still people who are, of course, writing novels and using narrative to say very important things in our world, and God bless them, and they are a treasure for us. But we're not terribly adept at reading them. And many of us don't read poetry. Many of us maybe read a story for its enjoyment, but we don't actually really think much about it and ask, what is this novelist, what is this story writer, the author, really trying to say to us? Proverbs are a distinct kind of literature which is designed to make you think. It's not just designed to tell you something. It's really designed to train you and shape you as a thinker about life, as someone who is equipped to have thoughts, have reflections, and who ponders what is a good life, what makes it good. Why would I say this is good? Yes, it tells me some things about how to live my life. But in doing so, what it's really doing is training me to navigate life, training me to think about the right kinds of questions, not simply amassing information or useful tips and life hacks, but rather asking, why would I live this way? And why wouldn't I live that way? So I want to turn to chapter 13. I just want to do a little bit of a well, let's practice. We begin in chapter 13, verse 1. A wise son hears his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. Now it's interesting here that when you're doing these, you want to think about, well, what actually is being compared here? And what is the axis of the comparison? Oftentimes you'll find Proverbs will lay kind of what sound a little like opposites next to each other. Here you have a wise person, a wise son who is listening to his father's instruction. Now notice instruction has a great deal of latitude within it. Instruction can be me telling you, oh, you didn't do that right. Here, let me show you how to do it. But instruction can also simply be positive. Instruction is a word that conveys all kinds of teaching. But notice now the fool, the scoffer, doesn't listen to rebuke. Now that's a very specific kind of instruction. Negative. This is when that person tells me, you messed up. This is not the way to do this. What you did was a problem. The scoffer, he says, is going to probably he's going to take the good advice. He's going to take the advice that's positive, that builds him up. But when it gets to be something that challenges me, that tells me that I did something wrong, the scoffer is not going to listen to that. But the wise son simply listens to his father's instruction because it's his father's instruction. You see, the distinction between the two people here, the scoffer and the wise son, is found in this one specific place, and it is really in your reaction to people correcting you when you've made a mistake. Everybody takes the good stuff, but wisdom will be found in being willing to listen to someone when they tell you that you've done something wrong. From the fruit of his mouth, a man eats what is good, but the desire of the treacherous is for violence. Again, you have to say, well, what exactly are we comparing here? What is the difference between the first line and the second line? From the fruit of his mouth, a man eats what is good. The fruit of his mouth would be those good things that he says, right? And by what you say is how you get. That in what you put out there is going to be the way that you receive even this sustenance for your body. But then he doesn't say that, the comparison also said, oh wait, we're actually talking about something else too. The desire of the treacherous is for violence. Oh wait, now we have this thing that's my heart, my desire. This want that I have is, and if I am treacherous, notice the treachery would be something that comes out of the mouth. You're going to get what you speak. And so ultimately the treacherous one, the one who is speaking bad fruit, is going to reap violence. You have to think about how those two things, the Proverbs do not reward skimming. And in our modern context, we have become masters at skimming. It's the only way you can survive if you're in a college program. I mean, when I looked at the sheer volume of readings that my students were being assigned when I was a professor, I realized I never read that much even when I was in my graduate programs. We expect people to learn how to skim, how to quickly take in the main point of something and then move on because you've got other stuff to do. No, this kind of literature really rewards slowing down, taking the time to think about it. Maybe taking one of these and rolling it around in your head as you as you drive to work for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Taking one of these and letting it kind of stew as you go on a jog or as you go on a walk. Grabbing one of these and committing it to memory, letting it sort of mumble around in your mouth till you can say it over and over again. And then while you have some task to do at home, just keep thinking about it. And let that sort of percolate through. How is it what are we comparing here? The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. I mean, if we put that into simply discursive wisdom, we would say, ambition pays off. Being industrious pays off. It sounds very much like something Benjamin Franklin would say. It's not that profound really to say it, but what he's doing here is, by giving you these images of these two different people, he's letting you think about, well, wow, how am I maybe one or both of these people at the same time? And then connecting this character trait of being a sluggard here and being the diligent, and saying that's going to have an impact on the way of my life. That I am responsible for some of the things that happen to me. That's not just something that is happening to me. I'm just not some passive object in this universe, but I'm also a subject. I also do things. And that sometimes, oftentimes, will have a great impact on the way of my life. And he's just saying that if you are diligent, if you do your job, it's going to go better for you. If you're lazy and you don't do your job, that's not going to go well. You're going to be hungry. This one pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. What is he comparing? Well, both of these people are I wouldn't say being deceitful, but they are evidencing something that is not exactly accurate. The one guy is poor and pretending to be rich, but the other fellow is wealthy but doesn't live that way. And you can tell he very much has a bias toward the one, doesn't he? That in fact it's much better to have the money and to live modestly than it is to not have the money and live flamboyantly, or to live as if you are rich. The ransom of a man's life is his wealth, but a poor man hears no threat. So the ransom of a man's life is his wealth. Kidnapping was a thing that happened in the ancient world too. Of all people, Julius Caesar, when he was a young man, was kidnapped and ransomed by his family. The ransom of a man's life is his wealth. But a poor man who has nothing to take hears no threat. That is immediately after the one of the guy who is acting poor but has wealth, and the other guy who is acting rich but has no wealth. That in fact, those two probably go together, and that the person who is modest in his life but has wealth is actually also protected from a lot of people who would try and take advantage of him. As you read through these, think about some of these that maybe speak to you. If you want to, we'll talk more about these. Come on Sunday, we can talk more about these then. But what I really want to do with you is think about how these things work. You'll notice behind me, of course, I'm standing here in the back of church on this wall that is toward the eastern side of the church. It's this brick wall, and I want you to think about these proverbs really as singular bricks in a life well lived, a plumb and straight life, a life that is strong, a life that stands. They are not individually, one of them, all that extraordinary. Just as no single brick looks like anything special. But when a master craftsman, a mason, measures and levels and puts them into this row, and even can do patterns in them, as you can see a little bit of a pattern in the bricks behind me, they become something in aggregate much more than what each individual seems to be. And so it is with these proverbs, that they really are very useful for the Christian today, as he or she would build that good life. For as we go into some of our later material, we're going to leave the Proverbs at this point. As we go into some of our other material, we're going to look at some material that talks about, well, what does a Christian do now? Now that Jesus has removed from my life this burden of paying for my sins, of earning my way to heaven, what do I do now? What do I do now that I am going to heaven? And the New Testament and Old Testament as well is replete with this. And I would in fact have you read these Proverbs as God instructing us in, well, this is a good way to live. God bless you. We will see you on Sunday.